For more than a decade, we've been bringing groups of pastors and church leaders here to England. You might wonder, well, why would we do that? Well, England is, in some cases, 10 to 20 years ahead of North America. And so we bring these North American pastors and leaders here to see a nation that has become secularized before North America and has now emerged at the bottom of the secularization into a massive movement of Christianity. And so we bring these guys here to experience this wonderful movement, an amazing movement of God that's rising up out of the ashes, if you will, of secularization. And that way these pastors and leaders have an opportunity to experience what's going to happen in North America in the coming years and prepare their churches for that. We want them to experience a movement. John chapter 5, verse 19, Jesus says to his disciples, he says, "I only do what I see the Father doing." And what that means is we're supposed to be God watchers. We're supposed to watch where God is moving, see what God is doing, and join Him there. So we invite people to come along and experience this movement because it's as much caught, probably more caught, than it is taught. You can read a book about movements, but to come and mingle with these people, it's like you catch a holy infection. Now, in the scripture, it talks about another movement that is a part of reality, and that is a part of the enemy. The enemy who is against the church, against Christianity, and working against us as Christians all the time. And that enemy is very real. And that means that we are at war. And since we're here in England, I want to share with you a powerful lesson that has impacted my life. Thinking of a country that has been at war, has been under invasion by Germans in the last century. And these people were bombed. These people lost lives by the thousands, by the tens of thousands, by the hundreds of thousands. People were just pressed to the limits here in this country and were in fear, sometimes within days, of losing their country. And that's a fact. This here is a typical English home. It has a nice iron railing out in front, and that might look kind of cute to you as a North American. But I want to show you the issue behind the issue and this issue of war, because this railing here has been replaced from a previous era where there was another railing here, and in that time there was a railing, and you can see the stubs of this railing right here where I'm pointing. And this is what's left of a previous railing. And I want to tell you what happened here. During World War II, the Germans bombed the steel mills of this country, and this country was running out of steel. They needed steel for airplanes and tanks and bullets and bombs, and they were fighting for their very lives. The government was so pressed, every government worker was pressed into action for this one cause against the war. And it was like a threat like no one had ever seen before. And what happened is they needed steel so badly. You can go anywhere in just about any city where it was very common in previous days to have these kinds of fences, these steel fences in front of their homes, where they came out voluntarily with hacksaws, not government equipment, not government workers, but the people who lived in these homes actually came out here with hacksaws, and they would work for hours to cut the railings down, to donate the steel, put it out on the curb of the street so that the country could melt it down. It was that desperate. These people recognized the emergency of this war. Now, back in North America, we have a decline and a marginalization of Christianity. If you take in, let's say, the beginning of the last century, 1901, let's take the United States for an example. In 1901, there were 27 churches for every 10,000 people. By the end of this last century, not long ago, in the year 1999, there were only 11. The decline of churches per people. It went from 27 churches for every 10,000 to 11 for every 10,000 people. Yeah, there are some mega churches now, and they have thousands and thousands of people, and they're very well known, but they only represent like a portion of 1% of the churches in the United States. That's just an example of how the church is losing ground. We are at war, and we are losing the war. I want to invite you to think and pray about, if you are a leader who senses this war and senses the urgency before we lose it altogether, if you are a leader who senses that urgency and you want to make a difference for Christ, I want to invite you to experience this, what God is doing, what the Father's doing here in England. I want to invite you to come and experience. I want to invite you not to get taught about it so much as to catch it, to get infected by this movement. Because this indeed is a Jesus epidemic. And so as you look at this and think about all hands on deck, the kind of challenge that people face when they understand that they're at war, I invite you to come and join us here in England. It'll change your life forever. You will then take that epidemic, that Jesus epidemic, back, and as a movement, God will use you to impact your church, raise up an army. It's time. Jesus is calling you.